For decades, it was more than just coffee and donuts. It was a morning ritual, a community hub, a symbol of Canadian identity itself. But today, the brand once so beloved that Canadians abroad would beg visitors to bring them Tim Hortons coffee is facing unprecedented backlash, declining market share, and a crisis of identity. How did a company so deeply woven into Canada's national fabric go from beloved institution to public punching bag, from cultural icon to cautionary tale? That's what we're unpacking today, and I promise you this story contains lessons every business needs to hear about what happens when you sacrifice authenticity for growth. To understand Tim Hortons' spectacular fall from grace, we need to go back to its humble beginnings. The year is 1964, the Beatles are taking America by storm, Canada adopts its new maple leaf flag, and in Hamilton, Ontario, a hockey player named Tim Horton opens a small coffee and donut shop. Tim Horton wasn't just any hockey player. He was a four-time Stanley Cup champion with the Toronto Maple Leafs, a beloved sports figure with a vision beyond the ice. His simple business model, fresh coffee and donuts made from scratch on premises, served with a smile and a welcoming atmosphere at affordable prices. Little did he know he was creating what would become Canada's most powerful cultural institution. What happened next is a remarkable story of how a simple coffee shop became interwoven with a nation's sense of self. After Tim Hortons' tragic death in a car accident in 1974, his business partner, Ron Joyce, expanded the chain across Canada with a laser focus on three principles. And here comes our first foundation principle: authenticity above all. While American chains raced to expand menus and boost prices, Tim Hortons kept things simple: coffee, donuts, and friendly service at reasonable prices. Their marketing wasn't flashy. It centered around everyday Canadians gathering for moments of connection. The famous Roll Up the Rim to Win contest turned buying coffee into a national event. Tim Hortons didn't try to become Canadian. It simply was Canadian. Canadian Cultural Historian, 2010. Here comes our second foundational principle: community first. Tim Hortons wasn't just in communities, it was part of them. The company launched the Timbits Minor Sports Program, supporting children's hockey teams across the country. By the 1990s, many Canadians had their first jobs, first dates, and daily rituals at their local Timmies. It wasn't unusual for small towns to celebrate when they finally got their first Tim Hortons. Foundational principle number 3, consistency and familiarity. From Vancouver to Halifax, a double-double coffee tasted the same. Tim Hortons became a reliable constant in an ever-changing world. By the year 2000, Tim Hortons wasn't just successful, it had become something far more powerful, a cornerstone of Canadian identity. But in 1995, a decision was made that would ultimately change everything. Tim Hortons merged with Wendy's International, an American fast food corporation. At first, not much changed. Sales continued to grow, but behind the scenes, the company's priorities were shifting. Then in 2014, the bombshell. Tim Hortons was acquired by Brazilian investment firm 3G Capital, which merged it with Burger King to form Restaurant Brands International. And here comes our first crucial mistake: prioritizing global expansion over brand identity. Former Tim Hortons executive James Richardson explains what happened next. The new ownership saw Tim Hortons not as a beloved cultural institution, but as an unexploited asset with international potential. What followed was a radical departure from everything that had made Tim Hortons successful. The changes came rapidly and relentlessly, beginning with the core product itself. Transformation error number 1, abandoning quality for cost cutting. To boost profits, the new owners centralized production, eliminating in-store baking. Donuts and pastries that were once made fresh daily now arrive frozen to be reheated. The coffee recipe was adjusted, menu items proliferated in an attempt to compete with everyone from McDonald's to Starbucks, and prices began to creep upward. Longtime customers noticed immediately. Social media is filled with complaints about declining quality and rising prices. Transformation error number 2, corporate culture collapse. Inside the company, the changes were even more dramatic. 3G Capital implemented zero-based budgeting, essentially requiring every expense to be rejustified from scratch each year. Franchise owners, many of whom had been with the company for decades, revolted as their costs increased while support decreased. In 2018, a group of them filed a class action lawsuit against the parent company. They took the soul out of the company. It became all about numbers. Anonymous 20-year-old Tim Hortons franchise owner, 2018. The breaking point came in January 2018. After Ontario raised its minimum wage, several Tim Hortons franchise owners cut employee benefits and paid breaks to offset costs. The public reaction was swift and devastating. #BoycottTimHortons trended nationwide. For perhaps the first time in its history, Tim Hortons found itself cast as a villain in the Canadian story. The numbers speak for themselves. Brand reputation ranking fell from number 4 to number 50th in Canada, customer satisfaction dropped 25%, stock price declined 12.4% while competitors grew, and the market share dropped from 42% to 27% of the Canadian coffee market. The company that had built its brand on being always fresh now faced fresh rounds of humiliation with each new initiative. Beyond Meat sandwiches appeared briefly before disappearing, an attempt at innovation centers failed to recreate the sense of community, designer lattes and expensive cups couldn't bring back customer loyalty. Transformation era number 3, hollow nationalism. In a desperate attempt to reconnect with Canadians, marketing campaigns became aggressively patriotic, but rang hollow against the backdrop of declining quality and corporate practices. Marketing professor Sarah Thompson explained why this backfired. They were trying to sell Canadians their own identity through increasing desperate patriotic messaging while simultaneously dismantling what made the brand authentically Canadian. The story of Tim Hortons' fall from grace isn't just about coffee and donuts. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing short-term profits over long-term brand equity. And here comes our first business lesson. Authenticity can't be faked. For decades, Tim Hortons didn't have to try to be authentic. It simply was. The minute it began trying to convince customers of its Canadianness while operating against Canadian values, the disconnect became obvious. Customers don't just buy your product, they buy into your story. When that story becomes inauthentic, they feel betrayed. Business lesson number 2. Cultural capital has real value. Tim Hortons' cultural significance wasn't just a nice marketing angle. It was its most valuable asset. The new owners treated this cultural capital as inexhaustible, something that could be leveraged indefinitely without reinvestment. They treated the emotional connection Canadians had with Tim Hortons as something they could withdraw from endlessly without making deposits back. Canadian Business Journal, 2020. And here comes business lesson number 3. You can't cost-cut your way to growth. The relentless focus on efficiency and cost-cutting created financial gains in the short term, but destroyed the very qualities that had made the brand valuable in the first place. As business strategist Peter Drucker famously said, the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. In focusing on the first part, Tim Hortons forgot the second. So what comes next for this fallen Canadian icon? Can Tim Hortons find its way back into the nation's heart? Recent signs suggest the company may have finally recognized the magnitude of its mistakes. New leadership has pledged to refocus on coffee and baked goods. There's talk of bringing back in-store baking and improving coffee quality. For Tim Hortons to reclaim its position as a national treasure, it needs to first off recommit to quality over expansion. The fundamentals, coffee and donuts, need to be excellent again, not just convenient. Number 2, restore authentic community connections. Stop telling Canadians you're Canadian. Show them through meaningful community investment. Number 3, rebuild trust with franchise owners. The frontline representatives of the brand need to believe in it again. Number 4, practice patience. Cultural capital takes years to build and moments to destroy. Rebuilding will require consistent investment over time. And finally, number 5, embrace true values, not just valuable imagery. Canadian identity isn't just maple leaves and hockey. It's about fairness, community, and quality. The story of Tim Hortons isn't over. Brands can fall, but they can also rise again. The question is whether the company can rediscover the authentic spirit that made it a national treasure to begin with. Tim Hortons didn't just sell coffee to Canadians. It sold Canadians a better version of themselves. To succeed again, it needs to become that better version too. Canadian Cultural Critic, 2023. So the next time you drive past those familiar red and yellow signs, remember, you're not just looking at a coffee shop. You're looking at a case study in how even the strongest brands can falter when they forget what made them special in the first place. Now, if you found value in this video of Tim Hortons' journey from icon to cautionary tale, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know what brand would you like me to analyze next. And until then, remember, great brands aren't built on marketing alone. They're built on meaning.